guys, and welcome back to my channel, Joyful Living. My name is Linda and I'm a personal trainer who really loves talking about mindfulness, intentional living. So this is what I'm going to talk to you about today. But the first thing I want to talk to you about is, you know the phrase, practice what you preach. Well, that's kind of what I want to talk to you about today, because this video is recorded just as much for your sake as it is for mine, because I need to practice what I preach big time. I don't know if you've noticed that I've been away from YouTube for about 2, maybe 3 weeks even, and that's because my inner critic has been hammering at me, and I've just been listening. And so I want to take this opportunity to talk about the inner critic and why the inner critic is, and what the inner critic can do to you, and how you can kind of reverse that or not listen to your inner critic as much, because I've been listening to my inner critic, and that's been hurtful in a way, because I have a dream that I want to tell you guys what I am passionate about. I want to talk to you guys about this, but my inner critic keeps telling me that I'm not good at YouTube. My content is really poor, and that I just will not succeed. And whilst this might be the case, if I listen to my inner critic, I will never know whether I'm good at YouTube or will become good at YouTube, and whether I will be good at conveying my message or not, because my inner critic will always tell me that I suck. And if I listen to my inner critic, I will never be able to achieve anything. So that's kind of what I want to talk to you about, and I'm back here on YouTube. I'm back here showing myself that I will not let my inner critic win, and that I will be successful. And so let's get into it and talk about your inner critic. So what is your inner critic really? The inner critic is there to help you first and foremost, but most of us listen to our inner critics too much, so it gets overpowering. And the inner critic is part of our fight and flight system, and is designed to help us don't make the same mistakes over and over again. The inner critic is also there to prevent us from doing dangerous things or getting into dangerous situations. So it's a really positive thing if we learn to control it and not let it overpower us, which many of us do. So do you, for example, tend to compare yourself a lot with others, or find that you have higher demands on yourself than you do on others? Maybe it can also be that you have high demands on both yourself and others. And maybe you're a perfectionist. That doesn't have to be negative, but it comes with some challenges to be a perfectionist, and it could potentially hurt you as well. And do you find that you're doubting if you're good enough, or criticizing yourself a lot? Because if you are, this is a really good video for you to watch. So let's get into the video and what we can do about the inner critic, and to kind of fight against it a little bit. The first thing I want you to do is to actually step back. Because in order to deal with our inner critic, we need to step back and listen to what's going on in our heads and in our minds and in our hearts. Because oftentimes, we are not even aware that we're speaking to ourselves in a certain way. Let's say that you are out and about with your family or your friends or your kids or whatever it might be, and you tell your kids in the middle of the street that your kid is absolutely horrendous, or that your kid is ugly or fat, or that your friend is crazy or stupid or ugly or just unworthy in some way. If you tell your friends or family or your kids this, they would most likely be very hurt, very sad, and probably have a hard time trusting you. Why would you tell yourself these things? Because this is also a way for you to not be able to trust yourself in who you are. You've told yourself these things for so long that you have started believing them the way that people around you, if you kept telling your best friend that she's ugly, she would believe you. If you would tell your kids that they are stupid and can't do anything, they would definitely believe you because they look up to you. So what you need to do is be kind the way I'm quite sure, the way you're kind to people around you. You need to step back and start listening to what you're telling yourself. Are you using kind words? Are you using mean words? Are you using words or phrases or thoughts that are not helpful to you, that are actually criticizing you instead of lifting you? So be aware of what's going on in here and what you're feeling, because if you do, that will help lift you instead of totally trash you and make you feel unworthy, because you're worth so much more. Maybe you're telling yourself that I never get things done the way I want to, or I always screw up, because a lot of us are really doing that. And are you really always screwing up? Like always? Are you never ever getting anything done the way you want them to be done? Or is that just in your mind? Is that just a negative thought pattern that brings you down? Because I think most likely that is the case. What I want you to do is rather think about, like, sometimes things don't go the way I planned them to, or it happens that I make mistakes sometimes, but I'm only a human. And I want you to think about ways to be a little bit more positive when it comes to things, not just to, I really want you to think about if you always screw up, or are you always mean, or do you always feel ugly, or, I do think that all of us have days where we feel beautiful, days when we feel that we are worthy, but still we tell ourselves that we're always ugly and we're always worthless and we're always doing things negatively, even though that might not be true. I want you to kind of think about this black and white pattern and find the gray in between, so that you actually see if these thoughts are true. Maybe you do always screw up, but if that would be the case, you need to do something about that. You need to address what needs to be done in that situation. But most likely, things that you tell yourself are probably not actually true, but you tell yourself that they're true. So be better at telling yourself that you're human, that you're doing the best you can, and that you do screw up sometimes, but that's not all the time or most of the time. Do you get where I'm coming from? I hope so. It's kind of hard to try to explain that in a good way. Another thing that I find to be really helpful is, say that your best friend is really doubting herself. She is really punishing herself. She thinks she's unworthy. She thinks that everyone else is doing a much better job. She's kind of blaming herself for a lot of things that she doesn't necessarily need to blame herself for. And what you see is a hardworking, sweet, wonderful person who takes care of everyone in her life and puts everyone first. So you tell her this. You tell her that you see her as a beautiful, wonderful, caring person who always put everyone else first. So now think about you being in that situation. Think about you saying all these negative things, which probably happen once in a while. I want you to try to be your own best friend. Tell yourself the things you would tell your best friend, or you are going to view yourself the way your husband does, or the way your best friend does, or the way your kids do, because that will be helpful. What do they see in you, and why do they see that? And do they really see the things that you see, or is that just in your head? I really want you to try to think about this, because your inner critic is not allowed to play a part here. It's only your best friend or your husband or your kids that are telling you these things. I feel so worthless. I'm so ugly. What would your kids tell you, or your best friend? What would she tell you? Would she tell you that, well, yeah, you're so ugly and you never get anything done because you're so unproductive? Or, I mean, your best friend and your partner and whoever it might be would not tell you these things. If they're good friends and if they love you, they will bring you up. They will lift you. And that's what I want you to do too. I want you to be your best friend. I want you to lift yourself up. Okay? So I also want to talk to you about acceptance. Why I want to talk to you about this is because we all have flaws, okay? And we do put way too much energy into our flaws when we could actually put energy into something else, because our flaws are just the way that we view ourselves, and it's mostly not helpful. Flaws can actually be charming. They can help us understand others better. They can help us view the world in a different way, or I don't know, but it can actually be, say that you're a perfectionist. You might not see your perfectionist side as being a flaw, but the fact that you constantly feel pressured to perform at a high level, or bring out perfect content, or whatever it might be, that might be a flaw, because that's bringing you down. That's making you not feel your best. So what you need to do is accept that it's possible to be good enough, and that it's possible to work towards being your best without pressuring yourself all the time, because that will bring you down. And so you need to accept that there's a good enough and the best thing that you can possibly do. We can take like a real classic, for example, also is a lot of women don't like their bodies. They don't like the way their butt looks, they don't like their boobs, they don't like their belly. And for instance, the belly, well, you might actually have a little extra fat on your belly. But what is that besides just a little bit of extra fat? And what does that matter in 10 years' time? As long as it's not like extreme obesity, which is bad for your actual health. So from the health perspective, that might be one thing, but a little bit of extra fat, that's just the way you view yourself. You think that extra fat is ugly, so you made up this flaw in your mind that your belly is so ugly because it has some extra fat on it. But who is actually thinking this? Is it actually you who think that is ugly, or is it the way you view yourself through the eyes of society, or the way you think your partner might look at you? Or just think about that. Why do you actually find that your belly is a flaw? Because I want you to think a little bit deeper in the fact that the bodily function when it comes to your belly, for instance, here as we're talking about that. It might have extra fat, but your belly is actually holding you up. It's carrying your whole body. It's helping you sit up straight. It's helping you move. It's helping you lift things, because a lot of things are connected to your core and your belly. So the function of your belly is actually absolutely wonderful. So it's doing a great job, but you keep telling it, you're so ugly, I don't like you, you're not worthy of my attention, while it's getting way too much attention. So what I wanted to do is actually think about not the the physical aspects, but not like the beauty aspects, if you know what I mean. Because you are beautiful just the way you are, even though you don't like your belly, or even though you think things about yourself might be ugly. Because we all do. We all have these things about ourselves that we don't like. I don't want to talk about mine because I don't want them to grow bigger on me. I'm working on what I'm feeling about myself. And I'm definitely not perfect in any way, because I do feel like my flaws also take too much energy sometimes. But I always know where the problems lie, kind of. And I try to think about, especially when it feels tough, I try to think about the bodily functions. And I've actually grown children inside my belly, so even if I wouldn't like my belly, it would still be an amazing part of me, because it has done so many things for me. And it could be anything. It could be your nose, it could be your mouth, it could be your ears, whatever. They work in your favor, and you need to be kind to your body and help it understand how beautiful it is and all the things it does for you, okay? Last but not least, is that your inner critic is actually awesome, okay? It's awesome. It's there for a reason. It's there to help protect you. It's there to help you to not make more mistakes. It's there to drive you. And it's part of our fight and flight system, and that is a protective system. So it's a really good thing. The problem is that we give it way too much attention and we let it control us instead of the opposite way. We need to control our system, kind of, and be mindful and get to know our inner critics and what triggers it. And I mean, does it trigger you in a dangerous situation, or is it just making you feel bad about yourself? And this is where your feelings will kind of help guide you. And by kind of listening to these things that I've talked to you about, I think that might be really helpful too. So I really want to thank you for watching this, and I would be so happy if you would share what your inner critic is doing in your life. Is it taking control over you, and how do you work to tame your inner critic and not let it take up too much space? Do you have any ways to silence your inner critic? And so if you do, please share them below, because a lot of other people might be really helped by this as well. There are tons of ways of taming your inner critic. These are just a few. So thank you so much for watching, and I'm so happy to have you here. I hope you want to stick around and maybe subscribe, because that will really help me on my journey. And well, I'm working on my inner critic too, so if you want to show me some support, I would be thrilled, because I might need a little bit of support to help tame my inner critic, even if that's not the best way. The best way is for me to work on my inner critic, and I'm doing that as well. But thank you so much for your support and for being here. I hope you will have an awesome day. Bye!